Hey, God bless you. It's Pastor Stuart Welch, and I truly pray that you enjoyed that interview with my brother Darren Bryant. I'm telling you, what we have been seeing and witnessing and hearing through these stories has just amazed me. The level of transparency that people are showing just in order to not just get their story out, but in order to help one another. During this global pandemic, the COVID 19, we have just seen the stress that it's putting on families. And I personally know 4 to 5 couples that have went their separate ways during COVID 19. So that alone will add to the blended family numbers. So God bless you as we go into part two with Brother Darren Bryant, not on his upbringing, but now bringing his daughter and his wife's daughter together in their marriage. Let's see how that goes. God bless you. I'll see you at the end. Now just to, transition over a little bit. Obviously, you've been married 31 years, so, you're 29 years old when you decide to make that move with your wife. Is this a conversation you guys have, knowing that, you have a child, she has a child? Is this a conversation that you guys have in regards to this is how I came up?
We've had that conversation a lot, especially just as a testimony. And because I was raised that way, I emphasize that in our relationship that we don't use the word stepsister or anything like that. And the crazy part is my daughter that lived with us and grew, and as she grew up, she's wonderful in the ministry, very stable, went through some tragedies herself, very stable. But then my daughter, who was a result of me being in the Marine Corps and stationed in South Carolina, and I use the term from old school, runaway child running wild.
Yeah.
That's what I was like in the military, and had a baby in South Carolina and didn't want to get married at a young age of 24. So I accepted my orders to Hawaii and booked out of town. And I literally did not go back to South Carolina. I always had my daughter come visit us and live with us. Once in a while, she would live with us. And I just didn't want to go back because I knew there was probably some bitter people who thought we should have gotten married. But I was, like I said, a runaway child, and I was not about to get locked down by anybody. I just hadn't been doing anything that I wanted to. That I should have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's some regrets. I always thought about how different things would have turned out with my daughter, because she's still struggling at 37 years old. But if she had I wonder what would she be like if she had to stay with us, because we were going to raise them together.
Yeah.
It took her till she was in middle school. She moved with us here to Washington. They were together. They were close. They were in middle school together. They're only 2 years apart. So my daughter was on the basketball team. She's one of the best players, a starter. Led the team in rebounds, led the team in three-point shots. She could shoot threes and play in the post. And she was kind of big. She was, in middle school.
Yeah.
And she was a premature baby. She was born at 8 months and didn't even weigh. She barely weighed over 2 pounds.
Wow.
And then when she started to walk, she walked with 1 foot up. She couldn't put her foot all the way down. And they were hoping that it would straighten out, and it straightened out. She grew, she got strong, she got big.
Yeah.
But she was with us, and then, here's the negative side of a blended family, where she was going to be raised with us, and her mother started missing her. They created some lie about her grandmother being sick, and she had to go home. And then next thing I know, I said, a new high school was opening up. I said, you'd be there their first 4 years. You would be the talent of the team. You
right.
would be, lead the team in rebounding and three-pointers and whatever. And then, scholarship could come from that, or, anything. And she was kind of like, no. And then she went back to South Carolina and never finished school. Uh, Still hadn't gotten her life together. And, even though her mom and her stepdad are Christians, they struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
She struggled in her relationship with them. She struggles in, which now, of course, is a blended family because she has my daughter and she has her son previously from a relationship. And I'm sorry. And, that is a problem. And she just really, really never got it together. And I'm still kind of like forking over the cash, I might say.
Well, that's, and it's interesting because, again, we don't know who this may reach. We don't know who this may touch, who may hear this. And there are so many, that, may be able to relate with your part of that part of the journey, right? That, they're young. One of the friends that, was in our group, he was away at college playing basketball. Here you were, away in the Marines. And, he fathered a child, away. And here you were. And I know so many young men that, that I grew up with, same situations. And, so hopefully, if you're watching, and you're hearing Brother Darren's story right now, that perhaps, this will help you. It will give you encouragement. It will give you a confidence that, time is not yet run out. You can still, reconcile these situations and circumstances, and it can work out. So if you want more information on that, or if you even want to talk to Darren yourself, just, message me. I always have my email up at the end of these. You can send an email, and perhaps you can get his perspective on that as well. So thank you for sharing that, brother. And then, so your wife had a daughter as well. Now, had she been married before, or did she, the same situation? How did her daughter come about?
Well, yeah, she was married. She got pregnant before she got married. And that's kind of like what led to the wedding. Kind of an old school thing, that,
a little shotgun wedding, we call them. Yeah.
Get married.
Yeah.
But after 2 years, he deserted. And, and so when we met, my daughter, evidently she didn't have a strong connection with her father, because it was a very easy transition for her to start calling me dad.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't wait for us to get married so she could do that.
Yeah. Now, how old was she then?
She was only 3.
Okay.
I mean, she was still in the process of divorce when we met. It was getting finalized, but that let me know that her and her dad did not have a close relationship. He had a drug problem, in and out of jail. Like I said, he just walked away from the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the issues that come about being in a blended family is that you get judged by the church from the old-fashioned people. Since my wife was divorced, it was a church group that I applied to be ministry, and they said no because my wife was divorced.
Yeah.
So that was something that hit me hard. We had to deal with as a family. That the church, this is a church that I actually got married under. The pastor was from that same group, and he married us, and I served in his church as a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Actually, as a youth pastor, they couldn't call me that. A youth leader. I led the youth group, and then I was going to join that church and apply for a ministry license and everything with that church group, and they basically said, no, we can't do that because your wife is divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up leaving that group and going to an independent church in San Diego, and that's where we were. We got married. So that was the first hit we had to take as far as ministry. And so, but we didn't, you never blame God for those kind of things. You just roll with it, and there's a group that's going to accept you and treat you like you should be treated as a family. They accepted us. We were off the ministry and made great progress in ministry there.
Yeah, and that's an important lesson too, brother, because I'm sure that you just like me, we run into people, and sometimes we hold them to such high regard, not believing that there are good people who can make bad decisions. You know what I mean? Like, that was their thought, that was their belief, that applied to you and your family. That doesn't mean that was right, but that was a decision that they made. And sometimes people find themselves stuck, like, well, then I just have to stay here, or they leave out with a level of resentment. Those people, when we really just have to look at it, through the eyes of grace and mercy, and just say that's their understanding. And like you just said, you said it perfectly. We knew there was a group out there that would receive us, and I'm glad that you were led to that group in that way. So thank you for making that point.
Yes. It's amazing that it seems like that was one of the things that came up, was that why didn't I just stay and serve in a capacity? But when you know what God calls you to do, how do you compromise that? How do you say, well, I'll let you do this, but I'll let you do that, but we're not going to call you this. But if that's what I am, if that's what God called me to be, that's what I have to be.
Yeah.
If you tell me you call me to be a pastor and you want me to reach people, then that's what, I'm not caught up in the name. But in that church, that name meant something.
Yeah.
That title meant something as far as ministry. Because how do you be effective in ministry when people want to come and talk to a pastor and I'm not a pastor?
Yeah.
And here's the judgment, is that, okay, you're not a pastor, so why do I need to talk to you? Why do I need to listen to you?
Yeah.
You're just a layman, and that's where it comes in. So I know titles aren't what we look for or try to gain, but they do open doors.
Yeah.
Because people call you that, and people respect that title. Because I've had it where people say, oh, you're a pastor? I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk to the deacon. They don't want to talk to people who are just as anointed in ministry as anybody else.
Right.
But sometimes it's necessary in order to gain the open door that in certain circles, and that's just the way life is. We don't not do ministry because people only accept a pastor. Well, if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes.
Yeah, well, and then on the flip side as well, the condemnation, that is heaped upon your wife because she's a divorcee. And, you can be in some conservative circles that, we never even understand at times people's situations and circumstances, but then we just lump them in. And, when we make those decisions, it's similar to some of the things that go on now. The old Puritans used to say that there is no such thing as an enemy. There's only people you haven't taken the time to have a conversation with, right? And many times people will, put your wife in that group, and they've never even had a conversation, Right. So we're going to, keep you in the outer circle, and we're going to make you stay out there, but we don't even know what your story is.
Right.
And we don't want to know your story. So again, if you're watching and you're out there and you click in, maybe somebody hasn't taken the time to hear your story. Maybe somebody hasn't taken the time to give ear to the things that you've been through, your experiences. Don't allow that to stop you in your tracks. Don't allow that to keep you from pursuing the path that the Lord has laid for you, or the passion that you have. Don't allow that to stop you. I see Sister Kim running back and forth back there. Yeah, tell her jump on there. She can give her story too. We want to hear from her too. Don't just be running in and out the camera view. We want to hear her view too.
Yeah, we're in the midst of packing still because of the house. So
yeah.
She's running by, and this is her office going to be for a little while, and she put a coffee pot in.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's great, man. And then so her daughter becomes your daughter, and you guys begin to raise her, and that's interesting for those who where the father is not influential, right? Sometimes the issues that we can run into in blended/step families is that there can be two different beliefs going on in different households. And you can have that. But did the father come back into her life, or has he never been in her life, or how'd that continue on?
Well, he was always around for a while for some years. Probably about 4 or 5 years, he stayed in communication, and sometimes we would have her visit. She actually went to Vegas when we were living in San Diego. But he was such a problem child, I might as well say it and tell it like it is. He went and got drunk and passed out, and she's sitting in the house, 4 years old by herself.
Oh,
His
yeah.
mom went over there and picked her up, and he had no idea she took her. So we're in San Diego, and we get a call saying she's missing. We jump in the car, we drive all the way to Vegas, and then to find out his mom picked her up because he was passed out drunk. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And that was a constant thing with him, to where she, and I have to say it's a God thing, because she never, as much as her dad came around and was a part of in and out for a few years, she never really made that connection to be that, that close to him.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like early when we got married, she just chose me as a father. And he tried to, and like I said, he was on drugs and off of drugs, in jail and out of jail. And every time he went to jail, he would, write to her and talk about God and his salvation. He was a talented man as far as artwork. His father could draw and very talented. And then he also had that same talent. And he would draw pictures and send them to her. So she knew who he was. But I don't think she ever really wanted to get close, because he wasn't around enough. And with being with me every day, we had the bond formed long before we even got married. Just when she met me, she was automatically drawn. And it didn't take long, because we got married to the date 6 months after our first date.
Yeah.
We met, we went on our first date December the 10th, 1988. We were married June 10th, 1989.
Yeah. And now, as pastors, we don't recommend people do that, but we're thankful that it worked out for you. But that's not something we would recommend that people do.
Not 6 months.
but y'all made it 31 years, so yeah, that's definitely a blessing.
That's how you know it's a God connection, because the circumstances around everything was really different, and mainly because our families grew up together. So it's not like I met some strange lady.
Yeah.
Her dad and me were born in the same hometown. Our families grew up. My sisters knew her uncles. We probably played together as kids, but just didn't know each other, because her uncles couldn't come over to my house and party with my sisters unless they brought her and her little brother and sister.
Yeah.
So we're kids playing in the yard. I met them then. At 16 years old, I think I met her again. We didn't have any idea who each other were. But our families had such a bond that when we got married, it was like a reunion.
Yeah. Yeah.
We left the wedding ceremony reception, went on our honeymoon, and they stayed and they partied till who knows when. Some of them didn't even know we left.
Yeah.
Because her dad was like one of our famous people who left the small town in Pennsylvania and grew up to be somebody, because he sang with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group, the Little Anthony and Imperials.
Yeah.
And so, he took over the group actually in Vegas. He was a headliner at Caesar's Palace for many years. But everybody had that strong connection. Like, you married Bobby Wade's daughter.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, he's famous to y'all, but he's my father-in-law.
Yeah.
But and his name is mentioned in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with him. But everybody knew who he was. So it was not like some strange lady that I never knew or met before. It
Yeah.
was like our families are just joining together again.
Right, right. That's amazing. So after the incident there in Vegas, how does how do you guys kind of deal with that? Like, of course, there's going to be some uncertainty. If he wants to see her again, there's going to be some. I mean, how did you guys kind of discuss that, and was there a next time?
Well, yes, it was. When we made a decision and together, and that's one of the things I recommend to all blended families, that you don't make one person the bad guy. You make your decision. This is what me and your mother came up with. That if your father's going to come pick you up, we're going to check his condition, see what conditions he's in before we let you go with him. And he showed up pretty much the last time we ever saw him. He came to get her and pick her up, and he had been drinking.
Mm.
And we was like, no, you can't go with him. And that pretty much sealed the deal. And I think
Now, how old was she? How old was she then?
She's probably more closer to 5 or 6 then. Because we lived in San Diego until 92. After we got married, she was 3 years old. Yeah, so she was 6 when we went back to Vegas. That's where they grew up, and that's where she was born. And so, we went back and we tried to connect with him, and he wasn't conducting himself properly. And then I think in his own mind, he just passed the torch.
Yeah.
He really stopped communicating much with her. Like I said, he went on his binge of drugs and in and out of jail. And, as much as we tried to make him reconnect, he just wouldn't. His parents, when my daughter got married, and I say my daughter because that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
Got married, his parents gave him money to fly up here for the wedding. Big day in her life. And he took the money and blew it. Went
Wow.
Went out of state and went on the drug binge. It was like, they gave him like, $500 or $600, and he didn't even show up.
Wow.
And,
Yeah. Does she talk about that, or how did she kind of process? I mean, there's going to come a time, I was actually talking to my son before we connected today, and there's going to come a time where I'm going to start doing our kids, interviewing them and asking them, how they process. I said in our opening segment with Blended, many times we take the time to get to know each other as adults before we want to expose our children. And we really don't hear our kids' voices, and we don't hear their input. And I didn't say that we should hear that in order to allow that to make our decision, but I think we're so careful and we're so cautious that we don't allow their voice prior to us already making a commitment. So, when she goes through that and she has this huge day, this marriage, and her biological father doesn't show up, was that something she talked about, or was that just something that just kind of slid right by?
Well, I mean, you can tell it probably was something she thought about but didn't want to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, she didn't really develop the bond growing up because he was never around, and then we ended up moving up here to Washington. So she really never made that strong bond. So to her, in her mind, when he didn't show up, it was another way to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest and final disconnect was when she was 7 months pregnant. She had struggles with pregnancy. She was 7 months pregnant and lost a baby.
Oh, man. So sorry about that. Wow.
Yeah. And we had a service and everything, and he wasn't there for that either. So 2 biggest days of her life,
mm-hmm.
he was not in the picture. A great celebration and a great tragedy. He had no communication that I know of.
Yeah. And
so for that kind of sealed it for all of us, that he was never going to be a part of her life and communicate with her again. And as far as I know, to this day, he's never communicated with her again.
Praise the Lord. Man, what did you think about that? That brother's story was so dynamic that I had to break it into two parts. And I'm so thankful for him. I'm thankful for his sharing. And I pray that something he said, maybe a question that we discussed, would help you in your own situation. And if you'd like to share your story, just reach out to me. You could send me an inbox, a message, a text, whatever you'd like. I would be thrilled to be able to share your story. So God bless you. Again, Pastor Stuart Welch, Bread of Life Ministries with Blended. God bless you.